It sometimes seems as if the football season, rather like election campaigns, never ends. Tonight, only a weekend away from June, clubs are still involved in the newfangled playoffs to the first and second divisions. But of course, it's customarily been a time for mourning here in the North East. More often than not, it's the end of our own club's sad struggles to stave off the disasters of relegation. And this year, one of them, Sunderland, finds itself in the third division for the first time in its long and proud history. But incredibly, for once, there's an exception. A year ago, Middlesbrough Football Club were virtually dead and buried, the brokers' men at the turnstiles. This month, they were restored to the glories of the Football League's second division. Tonight's edition of Northwards, Borough Bounce Back, finds how that miracle was wrought.
I was born and raised on Steel River. I see it all like it was yesterday. The ships and bridges, they were all delivered from Sydney Harbour to the Cisco Bay. I met my love down on Steel River. We served our dreams and spent our childhood days. In rainy streets we kiss away the shivers and hide from fear inside the latest craze.
Well, the last time they got promotion when I was there, it set the place alight. It stimulates an interest in the town, which is, unless you live there, it's hard to understand. I mean, the idea of people going to work happy really is the truth. And I should imagine it'll get the same sort of an impact this time. I mean, from almost extinction, they're now back in the second division and they've got a lot of good young players, and who knows, they may go straight through into the first again.
Middlesbrough have saved our season in the North East, haven't they? I mean, but for them, it would have been almost virtual misery the whole year. And the way they did it, well, it's an astonishing story. I mean, I've been reporting now in the North East for more than 30 years, and there hasn't been a story quite like Middlesbrough's.
I mean, over the past few years, while I've been here, Middlesbrough's gone down from the first division into the second and been a bit restless in the second division, then slipped down and immediately bounced back. And people bounced back with it. And people are focusing on a team that's upwards. So when the team goes up, the whole community goes up with it.
May the 6th, 1987, and one of the most remarkable turnarounds in the fortunes of any football club is complete. Middlesbrough, the club who 9 months earlier were given the last rites, are promoted to the second division. They've bounced back not merely from relegation, but from a financial nightmare which almost brought about extinction. The story of how Middlesbrough came to find themselves at death's door isn't a simple one. It has more twists and turns than the River Tees itself. Not so long ago, the crowds flocked to Ayresome Park, perhaps not as many as at Liverpool and Manchester United, but a solid 25,000 could be relied upon to turn up. Yet, in an alarmingly short space of time at the beginning of the 1980s, things started to go wrong. Very wrong. The closure of the club looked imminent in the spring of 1986 when Mr. Alf Duffield, Middlesbrough's third chairman in 4 years, resigned. He claimed he'd put £500,000 of his own money into the club and that he'd done all he could to get it out of debt. "I've done as much as I can," he said. "It's up to the people of Teesside now." One man who answered that challenge was Steve Gibson, a local businessman who hadn't been on the Middlesbrough board for long, but a young man who was determined to save the club.
Despite the fact we were directors, we were never at any stage informed of the financial position of the football club. We were given assurances at many board meetings that the financial situation was improving, and we didn't at any stage really question that. And when Mr. Duffield resigned, I then asked for executive powers. I received them. I looked at the position of the club, and I felt that there was no alternative but to put it in. The club was insolvent, there was no question of it, and we had no alternative but to put it into liquidation.
The club was deep in debt, more so than many people realised, and Mr. Duffield petitioned the High Court for it to be wound up. A provisional liquidator, Mr. Tony Richmond, was called in to try to satisfy the demands of the creditors.
The total debts were approaching £2 million. The only real asset of the club was its ground and the training ground. Those were charged to the bank in security for its overdraft of about £500,000, and you can't actually just realise those assets in order to pay the wages. You can't pay the wages from bricks and mortar.
The imposing Victorian town hall in the centre of Middlesbrough then became the headquarters of the campaign to save the borough. The town council realised that it would be a tragedy if the club were to die, and they set about forming a consortium to save it. The council had promised to contribute some £200,000 to the Borough Fighting Fund, but then had to withdraw it because of a government clampdown on the authorities' spending.
At that particular time, the council's contribution was an integral part of the financial arrangements which would have saved the club, and it certainly seemed for some time that the club's finances wouldn't, or the new club's finances wouldn't meet the target unless the council was involved.
By this time, the club had gone into voluntary liquidation, and the council had succeeded in bringing together a consortium. It consisted of Steve Gibson's company, Bulk Hall, a London-based businessman by the name of Henry Moscovitz, and representatives of the Newcastle Brewery and one of Teesside's biggest employers, ICI.
We as a consortium came together with the liquidator to see if we could get together or put together a financial package which would be good enough to save the club and meet the requirements of the Football League.
In those early days, did you think there was going to be a chance of you doing that, or did it look grim?
It looked grim from the start. I mean, I think most people saw it as an enormous task, but there was a real commitment from the people that were involved. And as we progressed and we got over particular hurdles, then there did appear to be some light at the end of the tunnel.
With just 3 weeks to the start of the 1986-87 season, the official receiver had ordered that the gates at Ayrsham Park be locked, and with no word from the consortium, the Football League was preparing to call in the players' contracts. The players and the coaching staff had been allowed into Ayrsham to collect their kits for training, but soon they were to be locked out altogether. The borough manager, Bruce Rioch, was confident that things would turn out right in the end. Nevertheless, it was a very worrying time for all concerned.
When you look back on those days, out of adversity comes good. And we had a lot of laughs and a lot of fun. We had to laugh at times, otherwise we may have cried. But we had some great times. And out of all that came the biggest bonus, the attitude of the players. We had a very young squad of players whose average age is 20, 21. Some of them may have been entitled to leave the club at that particular time because the promises that had been made to them that hadn't been kept because their salaries had not been paid on time. Some did leave, some went to tribunal, a couple I had to go and fight against to keep them here, a couple went on, but some of the players most of the players who are playing here today continued to commit themselves to Middlesbrough. And I have a high regard for those players who, in the difficult times, remain loyal to the football club.
The players carried on training on a pitch loaned to them by an amateur side, and the consortium, which had been paying their wages, eventually contacted the Football League with its plans for running the club. But it had to fall in line with new league regulations governing takeovers.
Well, the Football League were very concerned with the picture that football portrayed. Clubs had tried on many occasions simply to go out of business, pay off the creditors as little as possible and start up again, reform. And that was rightly so the kind of image that the Football League was trying to stop. So they put in legislation, and we are fully behind the Football League in this, to ensure. They said, okay, if you are to continue, you must pay your creditors you should pay the creditors to their satisfaction, and they imposed some sensible regulations at that time. But at all times the Football League were bending and they were flexible, and they wanted Middlesbrough to survive, but they didn't want Middlesbrough to survive at any price.
The programmes for the borough's first match of the new season against Port Vale were being prepared, and the league still had to accept the consortium's package before the game could go ahead. With just hours to spare, the consortium finally announced that the club had been saved.
It was only on the day before the season that we actually knew that we had retained the league status, and in fact we'd already bought the assets of the club, and at that time, if we hadn't got sanction from the Football League to play third division football, we'd have been playing in the Vauxhall Conference League. We had already given undertakings to the Football League to meet their requirements, but we had to satisfy those conditions before close of play on that Friday to be able to play the league game on the Saturday. And there was a lot of work to be done. People had to contact the Professional Footballers Association. They had to be satisfied that the players were registered. The ground conveyancing had to be complete. And perhaps the most difficult one, we had to have a ground to play on, assuming that we got the football leagues okay. And we tried the local grounds, and there was problems with Sunderland, problems with Darlington. And it was only at about 6 o'clock that evening, after we received the Football League's okay to go ahead, that we were able to say that we're playing at Hartlepool the next day.
We got a lot of objection from Port Vale, but the Football League made sure that the game went ahead. They told Port Vale, you are going to play that game.
So the borough's third division campaign kicked off in the unlikely setting of the Victoria ground at Hartlepool, just a couple of hours after Hartlepool United had played their opening fixture on the same pitch. The game finished 2 each, and Borough were on their way. The next step was the unlocking of Ayrsham by Chairman Colin Henderson 9 days later.
Well, looking round, it makes me realise how near we were to losing the club and how important it is. And it's just a super feeling to see the facilities and know that tomorrow night Middlesbrough will play its first home game of the season, and the return leg with Hartlepool, who helped us to stage the first match with their generosity at Hartlepool.
Borough were back at Ayrsham. They had a talented but inexperienced squad which was to mature very quickly over the next 9 months. It had to. But how had Borough come to find themselves relying so much on these youngsters? After all, hadn't they received a small fortune from Liverpool for a certain midfield player called Graham Souness?
Souness to Murdoch. That's for Craggs, who got well forward. Mills. Souness. Oh, beautiful shot by Graham Souness.
And whatever happened to the £500,000 Liverpool paid for another of Borough's stars, Craig Johnston?
Johnston's at the far post, and Johnston's got that one without a doubt.
Even the ever-reliable David Armstrong eventually left for Southampton. The fee was another £500,000. Add to that the money Borough received for the likes of David Hodgson and Mark Proctor, and there's about £2.5 million worth of talent sold by the club in the space of 3 years.
Literally 6 years ago, they were 2 steps away from Wembley with some talented teams of very good players. And then there became a gradual decline. Good players were sold. There was bad management in the sense that good players were sold, and they were replaced by inferior players. And there became a slide which was difficult to halt. Team got poor results. The attendances were affected. They suddenly, instead of chasing cup glory, they were involved in relegation battles.
The destruction of a potentially great team was criminal. The way they sold the Hodgsons, the Armstrongs, Craig Johnson, Graham Souness and all that, I mean, that must have been murder for Middlesbrough supporters to watch these wonderful players leaving the area, and then when those fans tuned into television, there they were winning things with great sides. It must have been torture. And what happened? They got a lot of money for those players, but they spent that money badly.
Off the field, Middlesbrough's financial troubles were not helped when well over £1 million was spent on a gymnasium and a sports centre adjoining the main stand. The club found that it couldn't afford to run it, and to this day it stands empty most of the time. However, the new board, together with the local council, hope to be able to open it soon for use by the general public. The people of Teesside haven't had much to smile about for many years now, and the loss of their football club would have been the final straw, especially as it had come hard on the heels of yet another tragedy, when British shipbuilders announced that Smith's Dock, the last remaining shipbuilding yard on the Tees, was to close. It was another blow for the jobless capital of England.
If the club hadn't been there at all, it would have been a further blow to a town which is already severely hit by unemployment, by people having to move away, by decline in property values and so on. And I think that something like that would have confirmed a downward spiral. I think the fact that the club's been saved has gone part of the way to halting that downward spiral.
We have a big population here. We have a catchment area of maybe 500,000. Middlesbrough itself has population in excess of 150,000. The people are good people, and they deserve the best that the town can offer.
Middlesbrough without football is like a wedding without a bride, and there is no doubt it has formed a very strong focus for the community over nearly 100 years, and without it I think the society here would be much poorer. Teesside has not enough to make it feel strong and confident, and they need more social facilities.
I don't think a team like the Borough should underestimate what it's doing to the total community. What they do on a pitch is not merely a talking point. It's not just something to talk about to keep you out of trouble. It's giving you a lift. And when you think of the economic climate, when you think of the depression of the area, and these local boys have broken through it, then they're saying to everybody, here's an opportunity.
Local boys making good is a story that's written right across the country in any football club, and the local people and the local community like to see their own local hero, their own local boy come through the ranks of a football club to make the first team. I believe we have 9 in the first team squad that have come through the ranks, and the people that set that program in motion initially have again a great deal of thanks from myself, because to have so many youngsters in one team locally is quite phenomenal. But it's a policy that we want to continue now, and I think that factor alone of those boys being local played its part also. And there is a tremendous affinity between players and supporters in this football club now.
Bruce Rioch hopes to strengthen that link between the football club and the people of the area by a number of schemes involving the players and the community. Here, 2 of the younger members of the first team squad are involved in coaching local youngsters.
It's basically just about teaching the young kids how the club plays football, because we've got our own way of playing, as you would put it, our own system, and it's just really getting the kids to enjoy playing football and as well get them into the system that the club plays. It brings a good atmosphere between the kids and the club, the players themselves, because obviously if you're in the town, you know, and you see the kids, you know, obviously it's a big thrill for them, you know, go up and say, oh, I was speaking to the Borough players today in town, you know.
Every town needs a football club, I believe, and I look at the crowds we're getting now, 10,000, you wouldn't have had 10,000 people flocking to a football ground and showing the support they have done. And there's a stack of support out, some people don't come to the grounds, obviously, but they're very interested in the football. I mean, it gives the town a focal point, the football club. A lot of the lads, myself included, we've got, loads of mates we used to go to school with, and they come to the game and cheer us on, and they can say, well, we know these players who are playing, and it gives them an added reason for coming to the game, come to watch us play.
And again then, Trots, good service, son, it's got to be good now.
Brian Little is the man responsible for bringing youngsters through to the first team. Although still only 33, most of his charges were too young to remember him when he was doing more than a passable impression of George Best for Aston Villa.
Villa finishing the match as they began, completely in control. Little's turn with the help of the referee, but what skill he's got. Another superb effort from Brian Little, who's made himself the man of the match for me.
I was one of the youngsters who left the area as a boy. I think my job now here, along with Barry Geldart, my youth development officer, is to make sure that local talent stays here, and it's our job to attract them to the club. When they're here, it's my job to coach them and help them along the way, hopefully to become first-team players. We're very much a young club now. 1 or 2 of the young players we have see boys that were playing with at school only a couple of years ago, playing in the first team, and it's a great incentive for them to get out and to play football and to come to this particular football club.
Colin Todd is another northeasterner who had to go south for his honours. He played alongside Bruce Rioch in the championship-winning Derby County side of the mid-70s.
There's Todd. Rioch trying to get round Allen. Todd! Oh, it's there! Colin Todd has done it again!
My roots are in the northeast, and I was delighted that I had the opportunity just to get back into football. But Bruce had appointed us, and within a week, he didn't know anything about this. The club had went into liquidation, and I just couldn't believe it, because it took us all my time to get a job in the northeast. I've been out of work for 6 months, and I thought, oh, here we go again. I'm going to be out of another job. But we overcame that hurdle. It was good fun. The boys stuck together, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think that is one of the reasons why we're all together now and doing so well on the field.
So to the night of May the 6th. The opponents at Ayresome Park are Wigan Athletic. Middlesbrough have to finish first or second in Division 3 to be guaranteed promotion and avoid the playoffs for a second division place. It's the most important night in Bruce Rioch's managerial career.
Lee! Listen to me! You're too far out!
Wigan, who were already in a playoff place but can't overtake the Borough, decide on a tight defensive game, frustrating the young Middlesbrough side. It succeeds, and Borough's forwards just can't score. A goalless draw looks inevitable, but that will be enough as long as another match being played some 200 miles away at Swindon also ends in a draw. With just a few minutes remaining, the crowd tells the Borough players that Swindon have in fact drawn, and that nothing can now prevent the Borough from going up.
Fans absolutely superb. Third division, unbelievable. I come from Glasgow and I watched like St Mirren and Mortons, and they only get 4,000, and that's Premier League. This is third division, that's superb.
Well, you've only got to look at the crowd tonight. They wouldn't have had no one to go to. Tonight, it showed that the support they have got. Without a football team, Middlesbrough would have been dead.
It's something that was a long way away back in August, and the players have achieved something remarkable this season. They really have, and along with the feeling that they've gained with the supporters has been fantastic.
The great secret of their success, I think, was the will to succeed. I mean, people often ask me about other clubs. When will Sunderland be a good side? When will Newcastle win the championship and all that? My answer always is the same: when they really want to. And I think Middlesbrough really wanted to succeed, really survive this season.
Who knows, maybe next year we should see Middlesbrough doing well in the second division and maybe going back into the first. I would like to see it. I'd like to see them compete at the top. It would help to get rid of their debt and put them on an even keel again.
Say goodbye.